is going. Okay, here it is. Okay. Kayla, I'm coming for you! I didn't do anything. A second. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Yeah! Beat Caitlin! Coming for you, Caitlin! Crush me. Who's she yelling for? Time! Are you yelling for me? I crushed you. I crushed you.
All right, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Great. We are back. It's Tuesday, January 5th, on the recording of this Street Parking Coaches Roundtable. And what a better topic to start out the new year, first episode of the Coaches Roundtable than nutrition. What do I eat? New year, new me. So we wanted to open up 2021 with this topic. And honestly, you know, we were discussing before we came on here. We've seen the questions that are coming in. And I mean, we didn't really need to ask for new questions because the number of questions that we get just on the Street Parking Facebook group daily about this topic are plenty to give us ammunition for hours and hours we could talk. We're going to keep it simple today. And the reason that we're going to keep it simple today is not because nutrition isn't a completely complex topic, but because what you guys need to know and what most people need to know are the simple things. And just like we try to simplify fitness for you guys, nutrition is the same way. And what most people need is just a few things to think about or a few things to try before they start getting into the like nitty-gritty details. Most people go nitty-gritty details first and worry about that stuff first when they don't have the basic building blocks in place. And I think it might have been the last Coaches Roundtable a few weeks ago where I said that's stalling for most of you. All of you right now have tried 17 different macro calculators and have looked into 5 different diets and have talked to, you know, all of your friends and coworkers about what they're doing and what you should be doing and all of that. It's stalling. So we're going to give you guys some things to start right away and some things to think about and remember for longevity and sustainability when it comes to nutrition. I thought what would be fun is in a very, we'll do a very short recap individually, each one of us, for our nutritional path that has led us to where we are now. And I believe that all of us here have similar nutrition. We don't all eat exactly the same, I wouldn't say. Like there's nuances within each of the way that we eat. But for the most part, we've all come to this conclusion that the way that we eat and basically the things that we teach to the street parking members are the best way that we have found. So I wanted to ask you guys, what else have you tried? Like, what's kind of your nutritional path? We'll start with Jeb that you've been on to get to this point.
So I've tried a lot of different things. Before I knew anything, I tried 0 fat. I'm not going to eat any fat at all. And that didn't do anything. And then I've tried vegetarianism.
How long did that last for?
I did it for 1 month.
I thought you were going to say 1 year.
Also, I mean, I'm happy to discuss the results elsewhere, but the results were not what I was looking for. Done strict paleo. I've done zone. I've done paleo zone. I've done whole 30, whole life challenge. I'm probably missing a few things.
I think you mentioned, we've talked about, you did the milk thing, the gallon of milk thing.
I did the GOMAD, gallon of milk a day. I did that for about 6 weeks. I've done a very brief stint in intermittent fasting that did not last at all. So I've pretty much everything that was out there I've tried early in the path, hoping for results. Later in my path, just to experiment with it so I could talk about it with people. And where I've landed now is just like you said, like keep it super simple. I eat basically the same breakfast every morning, and macronutrient speaking, it's basically the same meal every day. I have some kind of a carbohydrate like rice or oats. I have a bunch of vegetables. I have a little bit of protein, and I drink lots of water. That's basically it.
That sounds complicated.
Super complicated. So hard to keep up with.
All right. And we've talked about your path several times. Like, if you've been a Street Parking member, you've heard us talk about how Julian ate when we first met. But go through your journey of the things that you've tried. Or just the lack of trying.
I think exactly, because I've tried all the foods, right? I was one of those foodie people.
I tried cupcakes. I tried pizza.
Yeah. I mean, I was living in SoCal, LA, and then in Orange County. It was like the cool thing to do. Go find the restaurant that was new or that you found on Instagram that had, Fat Sal's was one of the cool restaurants, or not even restaurants, just Fat Sal's, where they had like sandwiches that had mozzarella sticks, chicken tenders, barbecue sauce, onion rings, like all the things that you would get in high school cafeteria that I all of a sudden become a cool thing if you like give some good branding and logos. Also, all these boba milk teas with cotton candy on all those things. So yeah, I mean, I tried all of the food and not really much of the diets or whatever you would call them, or better lifestyle eating. It wasn't until I would say year and a half ago that I started educating myself on nutrition even more in depth, and even with reading the books on, keto, fasting, paleo. I never really fully dove deep into any of those, just because I had you to kind of and pick your brain, and also realize how important eating carbs are for the style of training that we do on a day-to-day basis and what our lifestyle is, right? So being able to read between the lines while getting the education needed and understanding of food. But the only thing that I pretty much did was just limit the amount of carbohydrates and processed food that was in our eating. And it wasn't even that much, right? It's been an evolution process and cutting out a bunch of that stuff to now having like a very specific amount of snacks in our pantry, like chips. But for the most part, snacks is like salted cashews or almonds to apples, things like that, or nut butter packs. So that's it. It wasn't anything, like Jeb's adventures. But that's that.
I would say mine is very similar to Jeb's adventures, with the added bonus of leaning out for a bodybuilding style competition. So, and that's actually where I started to learn about nutrition. And I actually feel very lucky. I've mentioned it a few times, but I hung out with legit, like not like just the bros in the gym, but these guys were legit trying to become professional bodybuilders, and they were very smart. Like, they were mad scientists in more ways than one, to be honest. But when it came to their food, they had like chemistry level knowledge of how to use food to optimize your body composition. And I learned a lot from that period of time. And so I did all the things besides the milk thing that Jeb has done. But I started out with literally, I was eating a can of tuna fish for lunch with some like cucumbers and protein shakes where it was just the protein powder mixed with water, and like learned how to like carb cycle and all of that stuff even before I ever found CrossFit or paleo or zone or any of that. I did the bodybuilding thing, which is just, if you think any of that stuff is hard, you got to try the tuna fish for lunch situation, because that was just miserable.
Yeah, I think it's important that I start off with saying that I was a really picky eater growing up, and then ate like a complete a-hole like through my college years. And it wasn't until I started CrossFit and got into Zone, that was probably like my first time really diving into nutrition, and that's a lot to dive into, I think, at first. And then I transitioned out of that. Once I got a grasp and understanding of like appropriate portion sizes, I moved into more paleo. And then, the street parking templates have been the thing I've been able to stay consistent with the longest, because it's principles of nutrition. It's not like hard set rules either. So I haven't really done a whole lot, but I learned as much as I could to help the members at our gym, or, to help myself. But yeah, it's pretty simple for me.
So I think one of the things that we want to give you guys is a way to ask yourself, why am I considering this? Or what is this? If you're looking at a nutrition plan, whether it's the street parking templates or keto or intermittent fast, like whatever it is you're looking at, ask yourself, what is this giving me? Like how does this work for some people? What kind of results am I looking for from this? And I kind of wrote down a few things that Nicole's clock is completely covering right now. But we want to optimize our weight. We want to optimize our performance. We want to optimize our health, and we want to make sure it's sustainable. Those are the 4 goals I think that everybody should be looking for when it comes to the nutrition program that you choose. So what is this going to do for my weight? What is this going to do for my performance? And that doesn't mean that you need to be out competing in competitions, but just like how you feel on a hike with your family or day to day, how your brain is functioning at work. Like, can you focus? All of those things I would consider performance. What is this doing for my health? And is this sustainable? If you turn off the YouTube right now, just write that down and take those 4 things with you and ask yourself those 4 things whenever you're looking at potentially making a change to what you're eating. So Molly, who's not here because she has a brand new baby and doesn't live near us here in Washington, she and I came up with the idea for the street parking templates because she is similar to myself and Jeb and Alex, where we have tried macro, zone, paleo, all of these things, and we kind of got together a few years ago and talked about like, what are the good things from all of those, and what was making it difficult, or what do we think is unnecessary? And we took our favorite parts from all of those things that we had tried and tried to turn it into something that was easy to follow, that was sustainable, that was going to help us optimize our weight, performance, and health, right? But it's just one tool, and there are multiple things, there are multiple ways to go about it. This was just the tool that we came up with. So there's not one right or wrong way, and we're not here to ever say that you must do the templates and it's like the end all be all. So we wanted to kind of dive into how nutrition works. And so I think the place that we can start is calories in versus calories out. I used to be the person that were like, calories they don't matter. I've definitely said that, which is not true, by the way. They do matter. How do you guys explain when you guys see the questions on Facebook or when you just are talking to people? How do you guys explain the calorie thing?
I just say that calories matter according to like your body weight. So the more calories you're putting in, the heavier you might be, and vice versa. But that they don't necessarily have as much of an impact on body composition. So that's where we start talking more about like macronutrients and balancing those out. So protein, carbs, and fats, but that calories don't have as much to do with that.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the easiest ways to explain it is calories in versus calories out will determine how much you weigh. Now, we know that weight is like one measurement, but you can take two people that are 150 pounds and one of them is 140 pounds of muscle and 10 pounds of fat. That would be a very lean person, by the way. And one person is 100 pounds of lean body mass and 50 pounds of fat, and that's a different body at that point. So the calories that they're eating might be the same, but then just as Alex was saying, the macronutrients, and when we're talking about macronutrients, it's protein, carbs, and fat, will have more of an impact on what the body composition is, what that 150 pounds or 200 pounds actually is. And that's honestly what most people are after. I think if you asked most people, do you really care how much you weigh, or are you trying to look a certain way? Most people attach what they think a certain weight looks like, but it's probably not true. Where I think most people, they're after looking a certain way or feeling a certain way in their clothes or whatever. And that's more body composition than what the scale says. So macronutrients are important for that. So Jeb was just explaining how he puts a little oatmeal on there and a little bit of protein and a little bit of veggies and a little bit of fat. That's balancing your macronutrients. In the most simple terms, he's doing just that. So you want to talk about that a little bit more, Jeb, about how you do that?
Yeah, so, I mean, I should say that I have gone through the weighing and the measuring and that kind of thing in the past. So I have a very good idea of how much protein I would need, or how much carbs I would need. And honestly, the Palm method that we have in the nutrition section is like, it really is effective without having to bust out the scale. So what I try to do is get like maybe 4 ounces of protein, and then like 1 cup of rice or a fist size of rice or oatmeal. For me personally, I have found just through experimenting with veggies, like the more vegetables I eat, the better I feel. So I try to eat just tons of vegetables at every meal. And that usually ends up being like a cup and a half, or the way that I do it is like 2 big handfuls that I throw in there. And then for fats, to be honest, for me personally, I don't really worry too much about that. So, you know, I love avocado. If I have avocado that's ripe, I'll do a bunch of avocado. If I don't have fats, you know, if I'm cooking with oil, I'm assuming I'm going to get some of the fats from that, some of the fats from the protein, for example. I love doing whole eggs. So if I'm doing, like in the morning, I'll do some egg whites and then maybe throw 1 or 2 whole eggs in there. So I'll get some fat from the yolks. So really it's more about, for me, the veggies, a good carb source. If I get enough carbs, I feel great during the workouts. The types of workouts we do, they burn calories in the form of carbohydrate. So if we can fuel up with carbohydrate, it makes a difference in the workouts. And then, you know, I'm not really trying to make huge gains in muscle. It's more about sustaining. So if I just get my palm size of protein, a little protein shake during the day, like I'm good to go.
Now, one of the things that you've noticed that none of us have said so far with when we're talking about what we eat now, like Jeb going through that whole day, he's talking about veggies, he's talking about meat, he's talking about eggs, he's talking about avocado. There's been no mention of, and then I grab my Quest nutrition bar, or nothing wrong with Quest nutrition bars, I'm just saying, or then I measure out my Cheetos and so the very first step and the best way, in my opinion, to control those calories, because we do need to control the calories in versus calories out. You do, if you're trying to lose weight, which Jeb is not, by the way. That's why he's a little bit less worried about maybe throwing in extra fat or whatever. The best way, in my opinion, to control the calories in versus calories out is to eat real food. You're just not going to be like, no, I'm having 5 cups of veggies today with this meal instead of 2 or whatever. So the very first step that everybody needs to make if you want to control your calories in versus calories out in a sustainable way where you're not starving all the time is to start by eating real food sources, stuff that you don't need a nutrition label to know what it is. And that would be the number one first place I would start. Real food, and then balancing out the protein, carbs, and fat on your plate at each meal. If you want to turn the YouTubes off right now, that would be a great place to end, and you would see great results just from that. Now, he mentioned carbs for energy. Two things that we have to keep in mind. Where most people, and I would say especially women, struggle is getting enough protein. And so protein is super important for maintaining muscle mass and gaining any sort of muscle mass. And when we're talking about body composition again and what we end up looking like, we're going to want a little bit of muscle mass. That muscle mass will also burn more calories, which means that we're creating that deficit by not just not eating anything, but our muscle mass is burning through it. And then the carbohydrate source, the starchy carbs, especially. So when we built the templates, for example, we include oats, we include sweet potatoes, we include rice, things like that, because we assume if you're a street parking member, you're going to be doing street parking type workouts, which require energy in the form of carbohydrates to really maximize what you're going to be able to do in that workout. The harder you can work in the workout because you're properly fueled, the more calories you're going to burn in said workout and after said workout, and the more muscle you're going to gain, which means the more calories you're going to burn when you're asleep, and it all just adds up. So carbohydrates are important. Now, I will say, and I was going to ask you, because I know you've played around with your carbs more than us here more recently. When I've been super injured, I've cut my carbs to my starchy carbs, like the rice and oats and stuff like that. When I was unable to do intense training really almost at all, I've cut them pretty low to try to, if I was going to be in a knee brace, I might as well be jacked, I guess. But you've played around with it, and you've noticed how it's affected your performance more recently.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing when I was in that motivated phase to kind of, hit the trial and error stage of when you learn stuff. I would say you can only learn so much. Same thing with any kind of education before at some point you have to execute what you're learning, because then at that point you're just going to keep seeking people's advice, and you're going to get nowhere, right? Because then you'll get overwhelmed, be like, well, this person said this and this person said that. But when you start dialing it in, you start realizing that each person can have an opinion, but each person's own nutrition journey is very, very unique to themselves, because then there's like, what kind of training are you doing? What kind of lifestyle are you living? And so for me, when I made that change where I was realizing that, okay, your body doesn't necessarily need carbohydrates, right? But I know, so that's where bro sessions came about, actually, because I limited my carbohydrates. I started throwing in more bodybuildings with a little bit of like endurance pieces in there with like the assault bike. And I was able to get through that. Where I started noticing it really hitting me was when I was trying to do the street parking workout that required more intensity with like different range of motion movements. Because with the bodybuilding movements, like a bench press, you're laying down, you're pressing, you can rack it, and you can just hang out there and just repeat. Or bicep curls, right? You can just curl, and it's like one of those movements where you can just recovering as you're kind of going, because you can breathe, as opposed to like a thruster where it demands so much energy, positioning, everything. Your output is so high. That's where it started wrecking me, and I was noticing that I was starting to crash earlier in the workouts with my ability, with my intensity level that I'm able to do in workouts. So in knowing that, like my body fat percentage did drop from 10 to 7%, but there was a price to pay for that adjustment, and I figured that out quick. And I didn't like that, because I enjoy my street parking workouts, my functional movement workouts, and way more than bodybuilding style workouts, because let's be honest, bodybuilding workouts are freaking boring, right? It's the same movements, and there's only so much variation you can give with those. Whereas opposed to functional, our workouts, our street parking workouts, there's so much variance in them, and it keeps things super fun, and there's always something new and so much customizing that you can do. So to me, I that was the route that felt more sustainable in the long term. Where, like I said, when Miranda brought up a good point, if I ever got to a point where if I injured myself, not from probably street parking, probably from like playing a basketball game and rolling an ankle,
Impossible.
right? Then I would go the route of limiting my carbs and going more to like bodybuilding style workouts with being on on one of those aerobic machines and knowing that that's the only tweak I need to make. But it takes trial and error and understanding what each calorie serves its function for in your body.
Yeah, and I would say, so let's be real here, right? So going back to the like optimizing weight, performance, health, and sustainability, Jeb's body type, their body types are a thing. Your genetics are real. Okay, I did a post about that actually earlier today. Jeb could do the Buffalo Wild Wings cupcake boba tea diet that Julian was doing, and he will not get fat. Jeb is not going to get fat. So there are a lot of people, I think sometimes when people think that when we talk about nutrition, we're just trying to talk to people who we think could benefit from losing weight from a health perspective or a performance perspective. That is not true. If Jeb was eating the boba tea Buffalo Wild Wings cupcake diet and he asked himself, what is this doing for my weight? He'd be like, well, I'm not getting fat. Like, Jeb won't get fat. He's like, I can eat whatever I want. We hear that all the time. But if we start going down the list, what is this doing for my performance? Probably not going to be optimizing performance unless he's 22 years old, and he'll still be totally fine with that diet. Now we get to the next one. What about my health? Well, there's your problem, right? So real food in these proportions, it's checking the boxes regardless of who you are. So for Julian, he might have an easier time gaining body fat than Jeb does. So there's that piece of it for him. But what he found was with the low carbs, it wasn't helping his performance, and it didn't feel sustainable for him. And sustainability, I think, comes to psychological too.
I would say one of the biggest things that was a big learning lesson is for the longest time, I think people, when they hear the word carbohydrates, they freak out and they immediately associate carbs with, I'm going to get fat. Where you got to separate that. You have to realize, again, what the function of a carbohydrate is, and it's for energy. Like, it's your energy source, right? That's what's going to fuel you. So there's the starchy carbs, the clean sources of carbs, right? Like your white rices, your sweet potatoes. Great. Go for it. A lot of the times it's when people talk about the bad carbs, you're diving into highly processed foods. So making sure that you guys understand that, because once you do, you're able to separate and not hear the word fat and tie it to, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fat. And it's huge in people that just don't understand diet culture, right? Or diet in general. I see it heavily in my parents, or not really my mom anymore,
Lucy.
But my
did
dad.
Not mean that.
And especially, like, I don't even want to dive into like my whole dad and mom side of my family, just older generations, right? What they've been led to believe. It's sad.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you nailed it too, like where a calorie, with the calories in versus calories out thing, you hear a calorie is not a calorie. And where calories in and calories out, that is true. But you could also say that a calorie isn't a calorie. For example, a carbohydrate is not a carbohydrate is not a carbohydrate. Like, what you're getting from a serving of veggies or fruit or sweet potatoes in terms of like vitamins and minerals and fiber and all of that is not equal to carbohydrates from potato chips and things like that. So we do need to recognize what is considered a carb, what is considered protein, what is considered fat, but there are differences within those macronutrients that make a huge difference in how full you feel, what it's doing for your health, all of that stuff. So that's important to keep in mind. And I think for that reason, it just goes back to, again, balanced real food and knowing your activity level and all of that definitely helps. Now, at the end of the day, all of these things that we've tried are different, paleo, zone, and I've never personally done intermittent fasting. You said that you tried some fasting?
Very briefly.
I feel like there's a story there.
No, I'm just like like I do have I'm blessed with a little bit of metabolic flexibility, right? So I eat a lot. I can eat a
Privileged.
lot. And and I get really irritable when I don't eat.
Same.
I wanted to try intermittent fasting, and so like I tried to go, to like a 16-8 window of not eating for 16 hours, and during that, leading up to the window opening, I was just a really horrible person to be around. And I'm sure that probably goes away and you eventually get used to it, but it just, for me, like if I went on the show Survivor, I would be eating people within the first 4 hours, So yeah, so I just felt like this is not worth it to me.
So what I was gonna say, that's I knew there was a story there, but I'm the same way. And I have my genes are weird. I have very thin siblings, and then I have siblings that struggle with their weight. So, and I've been in fitness for so long that I actually don't know exactly where I go. I think I would go more on the I would just get super scrawny side if I wasn't exercising and eating as much as I do, but I'm not entirely sure at this point. But all of those diets, intermittent fasting, keto, paleo, zone, macros, South Beach, I don't know, South Beach, that's like so 90s, I think. They're all just trying to control calories it's just a different way of packaging, controlling your intake. So if you're not eating for 16 hours a day and you're doing intermittent fasting, you're probably going to end up eating less. So it's just a roundabout way. Now, there are some other benefits to fasting that you could get into, and we're not going to get into all the science behind it. But in a roundabout way, you're probably going to end up eating less, which is where the weight loss is coming from, because calories in versus calories out is a real thing when it comes to changing your weight. Keto is the same thing. When you cut out chips and soda and all these highly processed foods with lots of sugar and added fat and stuff like that, and you're eating just protein makes you feel very full. In a roundabout way, you're just eating less calories, and that's why people are successful at losing weight with keto. Paleo is the same thing. You're not going to overdo it on a bag of spinach. Zone actually does measure portion sizes, so that's just their roundabout way of controlling calories. The template is the same thing. Macros are the same thing. So they're all kind of doing the same thing. It's just going through those weight, performance, health, and sustainability now. Intermittent fasting is not sustainable for Jed. Paleo wasn't sustainable for me because I got way too lean because I was using it while I was trying to compete. And I would die if a workout was like more than 7 minutes long. I would completely tank. So keep that in mind, that all of them have it's just a sneaky little way of controlling your calories for the most part.
Yeah, and I would say, by all these diets that we've talked about, and I'm sure we all can agree on this after reading a lot of these books, you have to understand that these books are really going to go heavy on their methodology behind what they believe in. And that's okay, right? You have to see that based off of who's writing the book. The one thing that you have to realize as an individual when you're going through this or just about to start on your new way of eating, which is just eating less shitty. That's what it comes down to, right?
That's a book. You should write that book.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great idea. But the thing is, you have to realize that we live in a time, it's 2021, and look at your surroundings. You can't drive home without possibly driving through food every single block. Every place has food in it in some form or of another. You go to Target, there's a food section. You go to the gas station, there's food. You go anywhere, even your hardware stores, there's some kind of food there. So be kind to yourself and realize that you have to be realistic and realize that it's okay to still eat some form of processed food. Me and Miranda look forward to every Tuesday night and eating pizza night. Like, that's our thing. Food out there is super tasty. People have figured out that by combining the 3 macronutrients, you come out with a very delicious product. A lot of the times when you hear the diets like the Atkins or the keto, you're very heavily restricting a lot of these items, but that's only very short term because you're driving down the road and you're being bombarded by all these things that you've probably tied some kind of impulse reaction or memory to. Let's just say I'm driving down and I see a Chick-fil-A. Oh my goodness, every time you drive down that Chick-fil-A, You're going to think about those delicious nuggets that you've tasted numerous times. How many times before, like let's just say you forgot to eat your keto-friendly meal and you're starving and you drive by a Chick-fil-A, what are you going to do? It's only so many amount of times you can drive by that freaking Chick-fil-A before you drive into the drive-thru and then order and just cave, and then you feel like you failed, you're miserable. So I get really irritated when people take the approach of, I'm going all in, I'm going on down this route. Let me know when that's failed and come to me, and let's just talk about what's realistic now, right? Because, you enjoy the things that make, but create a new memory about things. So, for example, me and Miranda talk about this often. When we go to Tillamook, we're probably going to take Knox to go grab some ice cream. So it's like it becomes a memory and something to look forward to. Is ice cream going to live in a refrigerator at home? No, because it's no longer a memory. Now you're eating really shitty. So it's those things that you got to change your habits and you just have to manipulate things that work for the time of where we live now. You're going to go live the paleo lifestyle? Go live in the mountains. And don't live in the city or in rural areas, right? We're going through Pinterest and we're seeing, these keto items. It's like keto key lime cheesecake. What? The reason why also paleo failed, I feel like, is because the minute they came out with a paleo bake book, you've lost it. Like the fact that you're coming out with alternatives to substitute for your unhealthy choices that you were making, well, now you've gone down the road of, okay, you're doing Diet Coke instead of regular Coke. It's the same thing. Now you're going this as opposed to that, and now this diet is completely going to fail you. So wrapping it all back up to, we're always going to preach, just eat real food. And then once you have like a point of reference too, I think that visually helps a lot of people. Or you're going to eat one, even when it comes to like perfect food bars, which are on the healthier side of the things, it's like 300 and something calories. But when people realize how much a well-balanced meal and what that looks like when it comes to your veggies, your rice, and your protein, most members in street parking, they're blown away. I'm eating way too much food. How do any of you guys even attempt to eat this? Well, you ate 2 bags of chips. That is the same amount of calories that you ate in this massive meal. And yet you can't finish the meal of what actually real food, 600 calories, looks like, but you can devour a thing of Pringles in one sitting. So visually, I think people need more visual ideas so you can start for yourself realizing the changes that need to be made.
Yeah, I think so. There's that balance, right? There was a thread. there was a thread on my comment section on my Instagram not too long ago, where somebody had mentioned that, and they were upset about it. And I don't remember the context or what had brought it up, but they were upset that during one of our challenges we labeled foods as good and bad, which is actually not at all what it says on the food lists for the templates. It's what are the favorable and unfavorable. So just as Julian was saying, like we have to be able to find a balance. There's no such thing as good and bad in the sense that like you're only allowed to eat this and you're never allowed to eat this. And I think in answering that person and potentially I think I did like a video or something afterwards where I talked about there are everyday foods and there are sometimes foods. And the problem is, especially with New Year, New Me 2021, right, is you're trying to eliminate the unfavorable foods from your diet completely and in your mind potentially forever. And it's not realistic. And then you get into, okay, yeah, it's going to lower my weight. My performance is going to be better. True. My health is going to be better. It's not sustainable. And in that sustainability is not just how full you feel or anything, but it's your ability to enjoy your life as well. So we have to be able to teach people that skill of balance. And at first it might mean cutting it out completely to kind of like cleanse yourself of it, but with a plan of finding balance eventually at some point. So how have you like found balance? Because you did paleo and all that stuff. How did you come back to now where you're more balanced?
Yeah, it felt like blasphemy when I first so when I joined street parking, it was for the Jack by June challenge, and so I bought a template and I saw that rice was a favorable food, and I hadn't eaten rice in
How
years.
dare you.
I know it was. It felt like risky and adventurous. But I think that's part of why the street bargaining template works so well and is so sustainable for me, because I got to reintroduce some cleaner carbohydrates into my diet. So that for sure has loaned itself well, or lended itself well to that. And then Jeb, I think, in one of your Instagram tips when we were talking about nutrition that one month, had said something about kind of like allocating or allotting a meal or a day to eating foods that you enjoy, kind of like you guys do with your pizza night. And I think when you have that to look forward to, making better decisions in your day-to-day life is far easier, because you don't have that idea of like, I'll never be able to eat this food again. Because for a long time I was trapped in that, where when I would eat it, it was a binge, because I had this fear of like, I will never be able to eat this food again. And when I let go of that and just accepted like, yeah, I'm going to eat this every now and then, and it's going to be so yummy and tasty, and then I can move on from there. But it is going back to those very concrete foundational things, and that being by far what I do the most consistently, the most often, and then the other things are just things that I get to enjoy. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that he brought up is it's a slippery slope, and I agree with him completely on the paleo cookbooks. By the way, specifically, like we did see that keto key lime pie. We should have clicked on it, because how is the question? But when you start trying to mimic processed foods with real foods, and you start making paleo brownies and paleo cookies and paleo this and that, while the ingredients will have more vitamins and minerals, so there is a little bit of the health component, you're getting into some areas where they're going to be easy for you to overconsume, and now you're running into the issue of the calories in versus calories out thing again. I used to make the joke all the time that the quickest way to get an entire gym full of people to gain 10 pounds is have them all buy the same paleo cookbook, and they're sharing the recipes, and they're bringing in treats for each other, and they're making paleo banana bread and all of this stuff. So you have to be careful of thinking, oh, it's paleo, it's paleo, it's paleo. I mean, go to Whole Foods and everything, is considered healthy and paleo. That doesn't mean that you can just go crazy and eat as much of that stuff as you want.
All right, so I know we have a good amount of questions. We're going to do 5 only, because we knew this nutrition topic was going to, we can go on and on about this, and notice how we haven't even tapped into any of the science nerdy stuff, because it's just unnecessary for everybody, unless you have an understanding of foundation. But we're going to go ahead and, fundamentals, hit us with some questions, Nicole.
All right, so you've switched to healthy, real food. What are some good, go-to seasonings and or snacks for when you do make that switch?
I don't know.
All right, me and Jeb are going to answer this one, because we talk about this all the time. I was Jeb's Secret Santa, and I was so happy that I got him a gift card to, what are they called? They're Spiceology, right? So honestly, the best seasoning that you can go with, salt and pepper. Above all else, salt and pepper. That's all you need, and that'll add all the flavor that you need in your life without overcomplicating it. I'll let Jeb dabble into some of the other stuff, because it can get really, they can hide some certain ingredients whether you want to or not. So,
Yeah, first of all, I agree 100%. Any spice blend that's going to really pop on your food, the main ingredient is going to be salt. So if you get a good high-quality salt, I think that would be the number one thing. Personally, I really like spicy, so I will do cayenne pepper, habanero powder, that kind of thing. Big fan of lemon pepper, or the, what is it, tahini? It's like the chili lime. Also, the main ingredient is salt. But salt and citrus and spice, to me, are probably the ones that, I don't know, make the food the most exciting.
And what about snacks?
Oh, for snacks, me and Miranda are big on just those Costco tortilla chips. because we dip them in.
That is a sometimes food. Everybody,
Yeah, it's good snacks.
like daily snacks.
Oh, like really good daily snacks.
Yeah.
Honestly, you can't go wrong with almonds, cashews, and you're really flirting with that line the minute you buy the salted cashews, because notice they do that for a reason. The next experiment I want you guys to try is buy 2 bins full, 1 bin of just unsalted cashews, and then the other bin of the salted cashews, and see which ones you consume the most. Right? The minute you start consuming the unsalted cashews, you're only going to eat so much because you're like, oh, I'm good, I'm satisfied. The minute you start eating the salted cashews, again, that combination of salt with fat is just going to drive you crazy and continue your reaching. And now you're going into the calories in, calories out. Next thing you know, you've consumed almost 500-600 calories in just 2 handfuls of cashews.
One thing that used to really make me panic, and actually I still have a slight amount of anxiety around it, was the exactly balancing every meal with protein, carbs, and fat, including snacks. Because protein is hard to fit into a snack, unless you're going to do with real food anyway, unless you're going to do like a hard-boiled egg or like some deli meat, which, I mean, these are great options, or like some beef jerky. But I have cleansed myself slightly of that, and I do understand now that it is okay to have an apple and some cashews as a snack, and you don't have to perfectly balance it. Like, I'm not going to have some huge like hormonal response to an apple with some fat. Now, what I would suggest is don't go just straight up fat, especially if they're tasty, like salty, like, cashews or something like that, because they're really easy to overeat, and those do pack a lot of calories. So when you're going just fat, the calories are going to add up quickly. However, if I just crush an apple, I'm going to be full for like 5 minutes. So combining a little bit of those 2 things, I would say, is okay. Now, for the most part, for your meals, you do want to make sure that there is a good source of protein in them. And when we're talking about protein, yes, the cashews do have a little bit of protein in them, but we're talking about meats and things like that, even like some of the cheeses and things. So I used to have a really hard time and thought that I had to include some sort of like actual protein source, and I don't believe that anymore when it comes to snacks.
I'll go back to a better alternative snack. Get a cucumber or an orange or a jicama, and cut them in slices and use tahini. Or just use that tahini powder or just salt and lime, and you're welcome. You're really going to enjoy that stuff so much.
I'm going to make one suggestion. I usually keep a bag of chicharrones in my pantry, the spicy, like the pork skins.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, and so because it's protein and fat and hard, I don't know that there's any carbs in it.
Crunchy.
And a little crunchy. So that's one way like I work around
nice.
Yeah.
Next question.
Does it matter how many meals, and is less more when it comes to quantity?
I think this is a very personal question. I used to, again, think that if you went past like 3 or 4 hours without eating, that you were like on death's door. Okay, now I feel like I'm on death's door if I go longer than 4 hours without eating, and I'm assuming Jeb is the same way. And that's like some genetic stuff that maybe the 2 of us have going on. But at the end of the day, no, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can intermittent fast, and you can eat all your food in one meal or in like an 8-hour or even smaller window. And as long as you're getting enough protein and you're getting enough calories, or you're eating the appropriate amount of calories for what your goals are, it doesn't really matter how it's spread out so much for weight. It is going to have an effect on your performance, and it is going to have an effect on sustainability. So if I'm just starving all the time because I'm trying to do intermittent fasting, that's not sustainable for me, and I need to figure it out. Now, if eating every 2 hours is unrealistic for my lifestyle, and that's not sustainable for me, then that's also not a good idea. So you have to figure out what works for you. I would say the most important part is making sure that you have, the balance across the macronutrients, and figuring out how that fits into your day and your schedule the best.
You guys talked about some of the other diets, keto, intermittent fasting, things like that. Would you recommend working out while fasting?
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me? Is this? I don't know if I clicked the button. It depends on your activity. Yeah, I was working out when fasting, but it was more of the bodybuilding the bro sessions with street parking. Again, because I had that programmed rest, the movements weren't really super functional, right? It was just like laying, again, bench pressing, bicep curls. If you, I don't. If we're gonna go with street parking workouts, I don't, because your performance is going to suffer dramatically. Even when I wake up and I'm doing a morning session, I'll make sure to drink 2 scoops of Build, which is Progenix's carbohydrate carbohydrate product that they have, with 1 scoop of protein, 30 to 45 minutes before I'm going to work out, because I still want to have some performance in my workout.
Yeah, I think you go. So whenever you're asking questions like that, and I don't obviously know who asked this or why, ask yourself, why am I asking this? Where did I get the idea that this was a good idea? And you probably read somewhere that you burn more fat when you're working out, when your body has no carbohydrates or whatever, which is true during the workout. Now, if it affects your performance to where you aren't as able to push as hard, especially in something like a street parking workout, then where you might be using more fat as fuel during the workout because you didn't go as hard, you're not going to be burning as many calories after the workout or throughout the day now. So there's pros and cons. Going back to my bodybuilding days, we for sure did fasted cardio. Like, that's such a thing. But it was very low intensity, like on the stair climber for 45 minutes. You can work out fasted and be totally fine doing some stuff like that. You will burn more fat while you're doing the workouts. But in general, if you're looking for high intensity training, you're going to feel it in your performance if you're fasted.
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
In case this is where they're coming from, what if the only time they have to work out is in the morning when they wake up? Would you rather them work out fasted or not work out?
I would have them work out fasted or not work out. Well, I would say definitely still work out. There's still benefit from doing it for sure. Similar to Julian saying that he'll take a shake really quick. When we used to have really early morning track practices, I have a hard time eating a meal and then going right into a workout. And I know a lot of people are that way. So same thing, I would eat half a banana and a scoop of protein powder as I was driving to the track. That's going to be digested pretty quickly and give me, at least a little bit of something until I can get to my breakfast after.
Yeah, I would say that's where supplements do play a huge role, I found, for our lifestyle and when to take certain supplements. But when people are like, oh, are supplements important? They have their purpose, but they shouldn't be a reliable source.
Once you start eating more healthy, often the receipts from the grocery store go up a bit. So do you have any healthy budgeting tips for people who are like, wow, it's so much cheaper to get a $1 burger from McDonald's?
Oof. How honest do you need us to be with that one?
Use
Go
your
ahead, Jeb.
discretion.
Say
Yeah, go
honest but not mean?
I mean, okay, so you guys can tell me if I'm just way out of line here, but
boy.
I just disagree with that statement. I don't think it's more expensive to eat healthy. I think that's 100% wrong. The $1 burger, that's going to do nothing for me. I need at least 6 or 7 of those, to fill up, compared to if I bought, $6 worth of protein, or $2, worth of chicken, and then a whole, how many vegetables you can get for a few bucks, So first of all, I don't really agree with that statement. And I would suggest, if you're looking for how to navigate that, go to the store, look for the deals. There's always some kind of deal on chicken or beef or whatever kind of protein. There's always some kind of deal on some of the vegetables. Rice is so cheap. So I think that you can, if you apply yourself a little bit, it's not even an issue.
You also, another thing to consider as well is that's very short-term thinking, because let's just say you apply yourself, I'm going to save a lot of money right now and go with the dollar menu items and stuff, or the processed foods, the mac and cheese, things like that. Okay, when you start hitting your 40s and 50s and you're still taking that same approach, you know where it's going to get really expensive is in your medical bills. We cannot stress that enough, right? For you to feel where do you want, what do you want to sacrifice at this point? I say go with the route of learn how to prep food and realize that it's not that expensive. There's a reason why veggies always go bad so quickly, and you're like, wow, you're always throwing out veggies, because it's like you can't eat them fast enough when you, again, spend $5-6 on zucchinis or, greens. It's a lot of food. It really, really is. So, yeah, stop being so short-term thinking and realize that this is a long-term game, because once it really catches up to you, you could be the richest person in the world, but now you're really going to be spending lots of money on that health insurance policy. So
I will say too, I think a lot of times when people go to eat healthy, they go full like organic everything, and there are times and places where that does make a big difference. But if your options are, I'm only going to eat grass-fed organic from Whole Foods, or I'm going to eat McDonald's, like there are places in between those two destinations where you can get almost all of the benefit, almost all of the health benefits, still keep it very, very cheap, and not have to go full Whole Foods organic grass-fed. And I think that's where people get confused, is they think they need to go all the way to the most expensive cuts of meat at Whole Foods and stuff like that.
yeah, don't be a food bullier. Like if you're a person that are only go the organic route and preach that method and are an angry organic activist, shame on you, right? If you see somebody trying to, clean up their eating and they're going with the freaking GMO injected chicken, well, then let them have that over the highly processed chicken sandwich from McDonald's. Let them make adjustments and change their lifestyle over you coming in and preaching GMO, gluten-free, or whatever you're trying to pitch at these people. Because, hey, it's steps. It's small steps. Eventually, when they start realizing, okay, now I've made adjustments to my nutrition budget here, I'm going to start investing in better quality food here. Cool. Go that route, okay? Sorry, I just get really angry at people like that.
Next question.
All right, how does someone know what macro breakdown is best for them individually? We got this question on YouTube, and we also got several questions from Instagram asking very specific. I'm this age, I'm this weight, these are my goals. How specific do you need to be when just eating healthy?
So that's like another one of those like stalling things, right? Where people are like, well, do I need 42% carbohydrates or 37% carbohydrates? And I just can't, like, this coach told me this, and this calculator told me this, and this calculator told me I needed 2,200 calories, and this calculator told me I needed 2,050 calories. Like, I just don't even know where to start. And you're like a deer in the headlights, frozen. Number one, that the answer to that is nobody knows. There is no calculator that's going to tell you. There is no coach that you can pay as much money as you want to that's going to be able to tell you exactly how many calories you burn in a day, exactly how many calories you burn when you do this or that. There is no Fitbit watch or Whoop or Amazon Halo or anything that is going to give you exactly that right amount of information for what you burn daily and what your genetics are for your sensitivity to protein, carbs, and fat. It's just not, it doesn't exist. So lose that idea right away. And what the best thing that you can do is choose something that is balanced. For the street parking templates, they're roughly 40% carbohydrates, 30% protein, 30% fat, which is exactly what the zone is also. And start with that and do it for long enough. I'm talking like a month, 6 weeks, something like that. Do not change it. Do not think, oh, this isn't working for me. I must be too carb sensitive, or I must be too this or that. If you start seeing results, that's a good macronutrient ratio for you. If after 6 weeks or so, you're like, not really seeing any results, pick one thing. Maybe it's the total calories. Maybe it's just what percentage is carbohydrate. Maybe it's what percentage is fat, whatever. Change something, one thing. Try that out for 3 or 4 weeks. I've been doing this for 20 years, and so I know how to keep all the dials exactly where I need for my personal situation, but that is never because I got it from a calculator. It was never given to me by a coach. It's trial and error, just like, we've been talking about trying different things over and over, but it always comes back to real food in balanced proportions combined with exercise. And so you just have to start and stick with something long enough to figure out if it works for you or not.
Just to kind of add to that, I mean, 2021 in nutrition science, we really actually don't know that much. People can almost get the equivalent of a doctorate in nutrition and still not be able to give you the answers that you need. And if you think about when you eat one bite of food, how that bite of food affects your body in terms of fuel and health and all of that, there are so many variables that there's just no way that you can take all of those variables and plug them into one equation to give you a straight answer. And so I think that's just something that's I like to think about a lot because it's interesting, but it's just something to keep in mind that when it comes to nutrition, that's why we talk about simplicity so much, because it's so complex. You can go so far down the rabbit hole that you just get, analysis paralysis, right? And then just nothing happens at all.
It's kind of similar to how we give like the goal ranges for the workouts and we're like, hey, figure out the weight and customizations to hit this. The nutrition target is very similar. It's again, weight, performance, health, and sustainability. Like what that looks like for you and your lifestyle and where your body is currently and what you're able to do for your fitness currently and all of that. It's very personal.
All right, that will close up our questions. We have hit an hour in today's episode, which is awesome.
I mean we could just keep going.
Seriously, we really could. It's only how much can you guys handle at this point? All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and close out this week's episode of Roundtable with the coaches here, Coaches Roundtable. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Street Parking YouTube channel and share this information with some of the people out there that you feel may need to hear this and get a little reality check in their lives.
Join us on Friday at 2 p.m. PST to see if Jeb properly fueled for the second 2021 vault workout but with Nicole and Carolina.
I can't wait.
All right, guys, take care.